The tiny alien girl cowered and sobbed in the corner of the dead space station, praying to a dozen uncaring deities to save her from the ruthless slavers, only to freeze in horror as heavy-booted human feet echoed down the corridor. Her entire race had abandoned this station and fled like cowards when the pirates attacked. They left her behind without a second thought, like discarded trash. All the civilized races warned that humans were violent carnivores who would eat any small creature they encountered. Now one was coming for her, a grizzled human mercenary with a massive pulse rifle and cold, predatory eyes. The young Nausicaan shuddered, knowing she was about to die, alone, forgotten, and devoured by a savage beast. But Michael James wasn't your typical human, an ex-soldier and rough-mannered merc, sure, but not a heartless killer of innocent children. He had come to this derelict station expecting a routine salvage op and big payday. What he found instead was a terrified Xeno girl, and something else stalking these halls, something big and hungry and merciless. Leaving the child behind would be easy, except Mike had a soft spot for the helpless and innocent. His human instincts screamed to protect her from harm and get her to safety, no matter the cost, even as a deadly alien monster prowled through the darkness, hunting them relentlessly. Without a second thought, Michael scooped up the quivering Nausicaan girl in his arms. Heavy footsteps thundered closer. The creature had caught their scent. Heart racing, Mike sprinted down the darkened corridor, the child clinging to him for dear life. A guttural roar echoed from behind them, spurring them to move faster. Up ahead, a heavy blast door offered a moment's respite. Michael slammed his fist against the control panel, the metal barricade screeching closed just as a massive shadow fell across it. He knew it wouldn't hold for long against the monster's strength. Catching his breath, the weathered mercenary scanned the dimly lit passage, spotting the outline of an escape pod nestled in an alcove. There, that's our ticket out of this hellhole. Another bone-chilling roar ripped through the air, the sound of claws rending metal not far behind. Mike raced to the pod, yanking open the hatch, but his hopes plummeted as he saw the interior slick with leaking coolant, the acrid stench filling the cramped space. Frantically, he set to work, one hand still cradling Mira as the other fumbled to patch the ruptured line. The bellow of the creature grew louder, claws screeching against the sealed blast door. Michael's hands shook as he desperately tried to stem the flow of coolant, each passing second an eternity. Mira whimpered, her small frame trembling violently against him. Just as the monster started to tear through their feeble barrier, the final seal locked into place. Not wasting a precious moment, Michael strapped Mira securely into the pod before clambering in himself. The escape pod shuddered as it ejected from the derelict station, the force knocking the breath from his lungs. Through the tiny rear porthole, Michael caught a fleeting glimpse of the creature as it burst into the room. A behemoth of rippling muscle, razor-filled maw snarling beneath crimson eyes that glowed with primal hunger. Then the pod spun away, tumbling into the cold embrace of space. Adrenaline still surging through his veins, Michael turned to the terrified girl. "It's all right, you're safe now," he soothed, though his words sounded hollow even to his own ears. Mira remained silent, wide eyes haunted by the horrors she had witnessed. Swallowing hard, the mercenary turned his attention to the pod's navigation console, praying for a spaceport or friendly vessel nearby. His heart sank as he saw the telltale flicker of a fried system, the screen distorted and unresponsive. "Shit!" he cursed under his breath, his hopes for a quick rescue evaporating. The distress beacon was dead, communication array non-functional. They were adrift and alone in the cold void, with no way to call for help. Frustration and exhaustion settled heavily on Michael's broad shoulders. As the pod spun lazily through the empty expanse, a faint glow caught the corner of his eye. Frowning, he turned to see an intricate pattern of tattoos etched across Mira's slender arm, the alien markings shimmering softly in the dim cabin light. Questions swirled in the mercenary's mind. What did these strange symbols mean? What secrets lay hidden behind the little girl's haunted gaze? And why had she been left to die on a derelict station stalked by a nightmarish creature? As the pod drifted aimlessly through the cold expanse of space, Michael and Mira huddled together, conserving what meager supplies remained. The mercenary carefully rationed their food and water, ensuring the young Nausicaan received the larger share. In the long hours of silence, broken only by the soft hum of the pod's life support systems, Michael attempted to bridge the language barrier between them. With gentle patience, he pointed to objects within the pod, enunciating their names clearly. "Water," he said, holding up a canteen. "Food," he gestured to a protein bar. Mira watched intently, her large eyes focused on his every move. Slowly, she began to mimic his words, her alien tongue stumbling over the unfamiliar syllables. As days turned into weeks, a bond formed between the unlikely companions. Michael found himself fiercely protective of the little girl, his gruff exterior softening in her presence. He taught her simple games to pass the time, drawing pictures on the fogged walls of the pod to illustrate his stories. One day, as they sat huddled together, the pod's proximity alert blared to life, startling them from their quiet reverie. Michael's heart raced as he peered out the small porthole, his eyes widening at the sight before him. A massive ship loomed into view, its hull bristling with weaponry. It dwarfed their tiny escape pod, a behemoth of metal and might. "Nausicaan," Michael breathed, recognizing the distinctive markings on the vessel's exterior. A mixture of relief and apprehension churned in his gut as the ship's tractor beam locked onto their pod, pulling them inexorably towards its cavernous hangar bay. As the pod settled onto the hangar floor with a metallic clang, Michael's grip tightened on Mira's small hand. The hatch hissed open, revealing a squad of heavily armed Nausicaan soldiers, their faces grim and unreadable. The leader stepped forward, a scarred warrior with cold, assessing eyes. He barked orders in a harsh, guttural language that Michael couldn't understand. The mercenary tensed, his body coiled and ready to fight, to protect Mira at any cost. But before he could make a move, the little girl let out a cry of recognition. She tore free from Michael's grasp, rushing towards the imposing Nausicaan leader. To Michael's utter shock, the soldier's stern facade crumbled as he swept Mira into his arms, holding her close. Realization dawned on Michael as he watched the reunion unfold. Mira was no ordinary child. She was royalty, the daughter of a high-ranking Nausicaan official. The pieces fell into place, the derelict station, the vicious attack, the creature that hunted them. It had been an attempt to kidnap her, likely by rebels or enemies of her family. Before Michael could fully process this revelation, he found himself surrounded by Nausicaan soldiers. Despite Mira's protests, they roughly seized him, their grip unyielding as they dragged him away from the hangar bay. As he was led through the ship's corridors towards the brig, Michael caught snippets of their conversation, his translator struggling to keep up. Human, dangerous, carnivore. The words stood out, laced with fear and suspicion. Michael's heart sank as he realized the extent of the Nausicaan's mistrust towards his kind. What fate awaited him among these aliens, who seemed to view humans as little more than savage beasts? As the cell door slammed shut behind him, leaving him alone in the cold, sterile brig, Michael couldn't shake the sense of dread that settled in his bones. He had risked everything to save Mira, but now, surrounded by hostile aliens who feared and despised him, he wondered if his act of compassion would be his undoing. The cell's cold metal walls closed in around Michael as he paced, his boots echoing on the hard floor. Worry gnawed at his gut, twisting his insides. What were they doing to Mira? Was she safe? He couldn't shake the memory of her terrified face as the Nausicaan soldiers dragged him away. Suddenly the ship lurched, throwing him off balance. Alarms shrieked, red lights flashing. The deck shuddered beneath his feet as explosions boomed in the distance. Screams and shouts of pain echoed through the corridors. The Nausicaans were under attack. The force field imprisoning Michael flickered, then died as the power cut out. He didn't hesitate. Bolting from the cell, he raced down the smoke-filled passageways, searching desperately for Mira. Nausicaan crew members rushed past him, some heading toward the chaos, others fleeing. A group of soldiers spotted Michael and raised their weapons, shouting in their guttural language. But the ex-soldier was too quick. He charged forward, disarming the first with a brutal strike to the elbow. The second fired, the shot grazing Michael's shoulder as he spun, slamming his fist into the alien's jaw. Bone crunched, and the Nausicaan crumpled. Heart pounding, he sprinted toward the bridge, praying Mira was there. As the doors hissed open, Michael froze, horror washing over him. Bodies littered the floor, Nausicaan officers and crew slaughtered. Blood pooled beneath them, the metallic tang thick in the air. A soft whimper drew his gaze. There, huddled in the corner, was Mira, her small frame trembling. Her father lay at her feet, eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. On the view screen, a fleet of smaller ships swarmed, their hulls marked with a symbol that sent ice through Michael's veins. A crimson claw, just like the creature from the station. The rebels had come for Mira. "We need to go now." Michael scooped up the terrified girl and ran, alarms blaring in his ears. Rebels flooded the corridors, their faces twisted with hatred. Blaster fire filled the air, sizzling past them as Michael charged through the ship, shielding Mira with his body. The escape pods were just ahead. Safety so close. They burst into the pod bay, Michael's heart in his throat. A group of rebel soldiers spun, raising their weapons. Michael dove forward, shoving Mira into a pod. Blaster bolts scorched the air around them as he slammed the hatch shut. The pod shuddered, then launched, the force slamming them back into their seats. But their escape was short-lived. The pod jolted, sparks flying as a rebel shot found its mark. Warning lights flashed, alarms screeching. The life support system was failing, the air growing thin. Michael lunged for the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he tried desperately to reroute power. Mira whimpered beside him, her breaths coming in short gasps. Vision blurring, Michael fought to stay conscious, but the lack of oxygen was taking its toll. He slumped back in his seat, his hand finding Mira's small one, as darkness crept in at the edges of his sight. They drifted there, the cold void of space enveloping their crippled pod, both slipping into the waiting arms of unconsciousness. Michael's eyes snapped open, the harsh glare of fluorescent lights assaulting his vision. He squinted, disoriented, his mind struggling to piece together fragmented memories. The sterile scent of disinfectant filled his nostrils as he slowly registered his surroundings. A medbay, its walls a pristine white, the steady beep of medical equipment echoing in the stillness. Panic seized him, a cold fist clenching around his heart. Mira. Where was Mira? He bolted upright, ignoring the searing pain that lanced through his body, the tug of tubes and wires attached to his skin. His feet hit the floor, legs trembling beneath him as he staggered towards the door, driven by a single desperate thought. The corridor outside was empty, the hum of the ship's engines a distant vibration beneath his bare feet. Michael stumbled forward, his weakened body protesting every step. He had to find her, had to make sure she was safe. "Where is she?" Michael demanded, his voice raw, barely recognizable to his own ears. "Where's Mira?" The woman's eyes narrowed, assessing him coldly. "I'm Captain Olivia Thompson, and I think you have some explaining to do." Michael's fists clenched at his sides, desperation clawing at his throat. "Please, the girl, the Nausicaan child, where is she?" Olivia's expression remained impassive. "We found no one else. You were alone in the escape pod when we brought you aboard." The words hit Michael like a physical blow, the air rushing from his lungs. Alone. Mira was gone. The room tilted around him, and he braced himself against the wall, his vision blurring. I don't understand," he whispered, his mind reeling. "She was with me in the pod. We escaped together." Olivia's gaze sharpened, suspicion etched in the line of her jaw. "And what exactly were you doing in Nausicaan space? With a Nausicaan child, no less?" Michael met her eyes, pleading. "I was on a salvage mission. I found her alone, hunted by some thing. I couldn't leave her behind." The captain's lips thinned, disbelief evident in her stance. "The Nausicaans view our kind as little more than savage predators, and now you expect me to believe you were, what, playing the hero, rescuing one of their children?" Michael's frustration boiled over, his voice rising. I'm telling you the truth. She's in danger. We have to find her. Olivia held up a hand, silencing him. I'm not risking my ship and crew on some wild goose chase. The Nausicaans would sooner blast us out of the sky than listen to our explanations. As the days crawled by, Michael pored over the ship's databases, searching for any scrap of information on the rebel group with the Crimson Claw. Late one night, hunched over a console, he found it. A faction of extremists, determined to overthrow the Nausicaan government and mold the race into a conquering expansionist power. Cold dread settled in his gut as the pieces fell into place. Mira wasn't just a political pawn to these rebels. She was a symbol of everything they despised, the perceived weakness and complacency of their leaders. They wouldn't rest until she was dead. Michael's hands trembled as he pushed away from the console, a plan forming in his mind. He had to find her, had to save her from the fate that awaited her. But he was alone, a single human with no allies and limited resources. The odds were stacked against him, the path ahead fraught with danger. Suddenly the ship's alarms blared to life, red lights flashing in warning. Michael's head snapped up, adrenaline surging through his veins. He raced to the bridge, bursting through the doors to find the crew in a state of controlled chaos. On the view screen, a massive Nausicaan warship loomed, its weapons primed and ready. Olivia stood at the center of the storm, her face grim as she barked orders to her crew. "They're not responding to our hails," one of the officers reported, his voice tight with tension. Olivia's jaw clenched, her eyes never leaving the screen. "Raise shields. Prepare to evade." Michael stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The Nausicaans had found them, and he had a sinking feeling he knew exactly what or who they were after. The view screen crackled to life, revealing a battle-scarred Nausicaan commander, his face etched with cold fury. "Human vessel, this is Commander Kazan of the Nausicaan warship Retribution. You are harboring a dangerous fugitive, a kidnapper and rebel collaborator. Surrender him to us immediately or face the consequences." Captain Olivia Thompson stood firm, her voice unwavering. "Commander Kazan, the man in question is under our protection, pending a full investigation. We have reason to believe there's more to this situation than meets the eye." Kazan's eyes narrowed, a growl rumbling in his throat. "You dare question our authority? That human scum abducted my daughter, the heir to the Nausicaan leadership. Her life hangs in the balance, and you would defend her captor." The bridge fell silent, the weight of Kazan's revelation hanging heavy in the air. Michael stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Commander, I understand your anger, but I swear to you, I had no part in any rebellion. I found Mira alone and in danger. I only sought to protect her." Kazan's fist slammed against his console, the sound reverberating through the speakers. "Lies, you humans are all the same, savage predators who would prey upon the weak. You will pay for your crimes." Olivia's jaw clenched, her gaze darting between Michael and the seething Nausicaan commander. The standoff seemed poised on a knife's edge, one wrong move threatening to plunge them into a battle they couldn't hope to win. Michael's voice cut through the tension, steady and resolute. "Captain Thompson, I can't ask you to risk your ship and crew for my sake. Commander Kazan, I'll surrender myself to your custody in exchange for the safety of this vessel and her people." Olivia whirled to face him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Michael, you can't. We have no guarantee they won't kill you on sight." A grim smile tugged at the corner of Michael's mouth. "It's the only way, Captain. If there's even a chance it could lead me to Mira, I have to take it." With a heavy sigh, Olivia nodded, her shoulders sagging in defeat. "Very well, Commander Kazan, we agree to your terms. Michael will be transferred to your ship immediately." As the view screen blinked out, Michael slipped a hand into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the smooth surface of a small, untraceable communicator. He had one last ace up his sleeve, a desperate gambit that could mean the difference between life and death. The Nausicaan soldiers were rough as they escorted him to their ship, their grips like vices on his arms. They marched him through the dimly lit corridors, the air thick with the acrid scent of fuel and the coppery tang of blood. They reached the brig, and Michael found himself face to face with Kazan, the Nausicaa's eyes burning with barely contained rage. "Where is she, human? Where have you hidden my daughter?" Michael met his gaze unflinchingly, his voice steady. "I don't know, Commander. The last I saw her we were fleeing the rebel attack on your ship. I did everything in my power to keep her safe." Kazan's face contorted in a snarl, his hand lashing out to seize Michael by the throat. "You expect me to believe that? You, a lowly human, risking your life for a Nausicaan child? No, you're in league with those traitors, and you will tell me where they've taken her." Kazan's grip tightened, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "We have ways of extracting the truth, human. You will tell us what you know, one way or another." He nodded to the guards, who dragged Michael to a cell, their faces grim with anticipation. As the first blow fell, a fist slamming into his gut, Michael gritted his teeth against the pain, his mind racing. Through the haze of agony, he caught snatches of conversation between the guards, whispered words that sent a chill down his spine. The rebels knew exactly where to find the girl, someone on the inside, feeding them information. Michael's heart pounded in his chest, a sickening realization dawning. There was a traitor in their midst, a mole within Kazan's own ranks, and if he couldn't find a way to expose them, to prove his innocence and uncover the truth, Mira would be lost forever, and the galaxy would burn in the fires of war. Through the haze of pain, Michael focused on the lock of his cell, his skilled fingers working the concealed pick. The tumblers clicked into place, and the door swung open with a soft hiss. Heart pounding, he slipped into the shadowed corridors of the Nausicaan ship, every sense on high alert. Ducking into an alcove to avoid a passing patrol, Michael pulled out the data drive, his eyes scanning the dimly lit passageway for a terminal. Spotting one near a maintenance hatch, he darted forward, fingers flying over the keys as he accessed the ship's encrypted communications. Lines of code flashed across the screen, a labyrinthine puzzle waiting to be unraveled. Michael's brow furrowed in concentration, his breath coming in short, tense bursts. Time was slipping away, each second bringing him closer to discovery. As he worked to decrypt the messages, hushed voices drifted from around the corner. Michael froze, straining to catch their words. "To the rebel base on Xanthus Prime. Gertie, the girl is being held in the lower levels. Gertie, Kazan's second-in-command, is the traitor." Heavy footsteps approached, and Michael's fingers flew over the terminal, desperation fueling his efforts. Just as the final line of code fell into place, revealing the damning evidence, alarms blared throughout the ship. Michael burst from the alcove, sprinting down the corridor as shouts and pounding feet echoed behind him. Blaster fire sizzled past his head, scorching the bulkheads. He wove through the labyrinthine passages, his breath burning in his lungs. Up ahead, the hangar bay doors loomed, his only hope for escape. Michael slammed his palm against the control panel, the doors sliding open with agonizing slowness. He dove through the gap, blaster bolts nipping at his heels. The hangar was a chaotic maelstrom of activity, Nausicaan fighters prepping for launch. Michael raced towards the nearest craft, leaping into the cockpit and sealing the hatch. His hands flew over the unfamiliar controls, adrenaline sharpening his focus. The fighter roared to life, its engine screaming as Michael punched the thrusters. The craft shot forward, narrowly avoiding the closing hangar doors and blasting into the cold embrace of space. Outnumbered and outgunned, Michael relied on every ounce of skill and instinct to stay alive. He twisted and rolled, pushing the fighter to its limits. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, the acrid scent of burnt circuitry filling the cockpit. A lucky shot grazed his wing, sending the craft into a wild spin. Michael fought against the G-forces, his vision tunneling. With a final desperate push, he wrenched the fighter back under control, his hand slamming down on the hyperspace controls. The stars streaked into lines of light, the Nausicaan ships falling away as Michael hurtled into the swirling vortex of hyperspace. He slumped back in his seat, his body battered and exhausted. With trembling hands, he accessed the fighter's communications array, composing a coded message to Captain Olivia Thompson. He uploaded the damning evidence, the location of the rebel base, and a desperate plea for help. As he hit send, the ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring once more. The life support systems were failing, the cockpit growing cold and dark. Michael's vision blurred, his head pounding. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, fevered dreams assailed him, visions of Mira, her anguished cries echoing through his mind. With a final shuddering breath, Michael sank into the waiting arms of oblivion, Mira's name on his lips. But even as the darkness claimed him, a flicker of determination still burned in his heart. He would find her, no matter the cost. He would save her, or die trying. Captain Olivia Thompson stared at the flickering screen, Michael's desperate plea echoing in her mind. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, the lives of her crew hanging in the balance. She closed her eyes, drawing in a deep breath, then straightened her shoulders, resolve hardening in her gaze. "Set a course for the rebel base," she ordered, her voice steady. "We're going in." Her crew sprang into action, the bridge humming with newfound purpose. Olivia's fingers tightened on the armrests of her chair, the enormity of her choice sinking in. They were about to plunge headlong into a conflict that could spark an interstellar war, all on the word of a single man. But something in Michael's message rang true, a desperate sincerity that she couldn't ignore. If there was even a chance that he was telling the truth, that an innocent child's life hung in the balance, she had to act. As the ship hurtled through the void, Olivia could only hope they wouldn't be too late. On the planet's surface, Michael dragged himself from the wreckage of his ship, his body battered and bruised. He squinted against the harsh glare of the alien sun, the jungle looming before him like a living, breathing entity. Strange calls echoed from the dense foliage, the sound of unseen predators stalking through the undergrowth. Michael's hand tightened on the hilt of his knife, the only weapon he had managed to salvage from the crash. As he trudged deeper into the jungle, a glint of metal caught his eye. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. There, half buried beneath the creeping vines, lay the wreckage of an ancient spacecraft. Its hull was pitted and scarred, the once sleek lines obscured by centuries of neglect. But as Michael approached, he could see that the craft was far more advanced than anything he had encountered before. He clambered inside, the interior dimly lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi. Dust motes danced in the air, the silence broken only by the distant cries of the jungle creatures. As he made his way deeper into the ship, he stumbled upon a cache of weapons, their sleek lines and glowing energy cells unlike anything he had ever seen. His fingers closed around the grip of a rifle, the weight reassuring in his hands. But it was the small, innocuous device that caught his attention, a prototype cloaking shield that shimmered with an otherworldly light. Michael smiled grimly, a plan forming in his mind. Armed with his newfound tools, he set out for the rebel base, his steps quick and purposeful. The cloaking device shielded him from prying eyes as he slipped past the base's defenses, the energy rifle a comforting presence at his side. But as he crept through the dimly lit corridors, a figure stepped out from the shadows, a cruel smile twisting his features. Zoran, the rebel leader, stood before him, flanked by a dozen heavily armed soldiers. "Did you really think you could just waltz in here undetected?" Zoran sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "Your every move has been tracked, fed to us by our loyal informant within Kazan's ranks." Michael's grip tightened on his rifle, his mind racing. He was outnumbered and outgunned, trapped like a rat in a maze. But before Zoran could give the order to fire, a sudden commotion erupted from the far end of the corridor. Michael's heart leapt as he saw Mira burst into view, a stolen blaster clutched in her tiny hands. She fired wildly, the bolts of energy searing past the surprised rebels. In the chaos, Michael surged forward, his own weapon blazing to life. Together they fought their way through the base, the advanced technology of Michael's scavenged weapons evening the odds. Rebels fell before them, their cries of pain and rage echoing off the metal walls. As they burst out into the open air, the roar of engines filled the sky. Michael looked up, his eyes widening, as he saw Captain Thompson's ship descending from the heavens, its weapons already firing upon the rebel stronghold. The ground shook with the force of the explosions, the jungle set ablaze by the barrage. Michael grabbed Mira's hand, pulling her close as they raced towards the waiting ship, the heat of the flames licking at their backs. Michael and Mira raced through the dense jungle, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Rebel patrols scoured the underbrush, their harsh voices drawing nearer with each passing moment. Sweat poured down Michael's face as he pushed through the tangled vines, his grip never leaving Mira's hand. A guttural growl froze them in their tracks. A massive serpentine creature coiled around a tree branch, its scales glistening with venom. Michael raised his rifle, but Mira tugged at his arm, pointing to a narrow path that wound away from the beast. They crept along the trail, the jungle's oppressive heat bearing down on them. As they rounded a bend, a glint of metal caught Michael's eye. Nestled beneath the foliage, a hidden door led into a hillside, the Nausicaan insignia emblazoned upon its surface. Michael pressed his hand to the scanner, holding his breath. To his surprise, the door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor that stretched into the depths of the outpost. They navigated the twisting passages, the air thick with the acrid scent of chemicals. Muffled voices drifted from a nearby room, and Michael edged closer, straining to listen. "Oh, the weapon is almost ready," a Nausicaan scientist muttered, his voice tinged with excitement. "It will target the rebels' genetic structure, leaving our own people unharmed." The guards parted, revealing the scarred face of Zoran, the rebel leader. He leveled his blaster at Michael's chest, a cruel smile playing across his lips. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble, human," he spat, "but now you'll watch as your precious little princess succumbs to our greatest weapon." Michael's vision turned red. He lunged forward, firing his rifle with deadly precision. The guards fell, their screams cut short by the sizzling bolts of energy. He raced through the outpost, tearing through cabinets and drawers. Vials of strange liquids shattered at his feet, but he pressed on, his heart hammering in his chest. Finally, his fingers closed around a small blue vial, the antidote. He sprinted back to Mira, cradling her shivering form as he administered the dose. "Stay with me," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Don't you dare give up now." As the antidote took hold, Mira's breathing steadied. Color returned to her cheeks and her eyes fluttered open. Together they planted the explosives, the timer ticking down with each passing second. As they raced for the exit, the rebel forces stormed the outpost, their weapons blazing. Michael and the loyal Nausicaan scientists fought back, their desperate last stand buying precious time. The explosives detonated, the outpost erupting in a ball of flame. Through the smoke and debris, Michael saw Zoran escaping, his face twisted with rage. But there was no time to pursue him. Captain Thompson's ship descended from the sky, the roar of its engines filling the air. Michael and Mira stumbled aboard, their bodies battered and exhausted. But even as they embraced their allies, a chilling transmission crackled over the comm. Kazan's ship had been hijacked, the traitor now at its helm. And in the rebel leader's hands, the most powerful weapon of all, a Nausicaan warship, ready to unleash hell upon the galaxy. On board Captain Thompson's ship, Michael, Mira, and the crew gathered around a holographic display of Kazan's hijacked vessel. The air was thick with tension as they pored over the schematics, searching for weaknesses to exploit. "There," Michael pointed to a small maintenance hatch near the engine room. "If we can get in through there, we can disable the ship's weapons and propulsion systems." Captain Thompson nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "And with the cloaking device, we should be able to slip past their sensors undetected." Michael placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We won't, but we need to be smart about this. Once we're aboard, you head straight for the bridge. Confront Zoran. Keep him distracted while we take care of the rest." The plan set, they made their final preparations, checking weapons and gear. The prototype cloaking device shimmered in Michael's hands, a fragile hope against overwhelming odds. As they approached the Nausicaan ship, the cloaking device engaged, rendering them invisible to the enemy's scanners. The maintenance hatch loomed before them, a dark maw waiting to swallow them whole. Michael and Thompson exchanged a tense glance before slipping inside, Mira close behind. The corridors of the ship were eerily quiet, the only sound the distant thrum of the engines. They moved swiftly, dispatching rebel patrols with silent efficiency. But as they pushed deeper into the ship, resistance grew heavier, traitors among the crew joining the fight. Blaster fire streaked through the air, the acrid scent of ozone filling their nostrils. Michael and Thompson fought back to back, their movements fluid and precise. Mira, her face set with grim determination, slipped away in the chaos, making her way towards the bridge. The door to the bridge hissed open, revealing Zoran lounging in the command chair, a cruel smile playing across his lips. Mira stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Zoran laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "Surrender? To you, oh dear sister, how little you understand." Mira froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. "Sister, what are you talking about?" Zoran rose from the chair, his eyes glinting with malice. "Did our father never tell you? I am the product of his shame, the son he never wanted, born of a rebel and hidden away like a dirty secret." He stepped closer, his voice dripping with venom. "But no more. I will take what is rightfully mine, and you, dear Mira, will help me do it." Mira shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, I won't let you. I won't betray my people, my father." Zoran's smile turned predatory. "You don't have a choice." He lunged forward, seizing Mira by the throat. She struggled against his grip, but he was too strong, his fingers digging into her flesh. The door to the bridge burst open, Michael and Thompson rushing in, weapons drawn. But Zoran was ready for them, dragging Mira in front of him like a human shield. "Drop your weapons," he snarled, "or she dies." Michael and Thompson hesitated, their eyes locked on Mira's terrified face. The ship's weapons swiveled to target their vessel, the threat clear. In that moment, Michael knew what he had to do. He lowered his rifle, stepping forward with his hands raised. "Take me instead," he said, his voice steady. "Let her go and I'll surrender. No more bloodshed, no more violence." Zoran's eyes narrowed, considering the offer. Then, slowly, a cruel smile spread across his face. "Very well, human. Your life for hers. A fitting end to your pathetic existence." He shoved Mira aside, his men seizing Michael and forcing him to his knees. Thompson tensed, ready to fight, but Michael shook his head. "No, Captain, this is the only way." As Zoran raised his blaster, ready to execute the human who had caused him so much trouble, a sudden blast rocked the ship. Kazan burst onto the bridge, his weapon firing, taking down the rebel guards with ruthless precision. In the chaos, Michael sprang to his feet, tackling Zoran to the ground. They grappled, trading blows, as Mira and Thompson joined the fray. The bridge dissolved into a maelstrom of fire and blood, rebels and loyalists locked in a desperate struggle. Self-destruct sequence initiated. All personnel evacuate immediately. Michael, Mira, and Kazan exchanged a horrified glance. They had only minutes before the ship tore itself apart. Leaving Zoran to his fate, they raced through the corridors, dodging debris and explosions, the heat of the flames licking at their backs. They barely made it to the escape pods, hurling themselves inside just as the ship detonated behind them. The shockwave slammed into the tiny craft, sending it tumbling end over end through the void. As the pod stabilized, Michael looked out at the expanding cloud of debris that had once been a proud Nausicaan warship. Zoran was gone, the rebellion crushed, but at what cost? In the days that followed, the Nausicaan government struggled to rebuild, the scars of the conflict running deep. Kazan and Mira worked tirelessly, forging alliances, mending bridges, trying to create a new future for their people. And Michael, the human who had saved them all, found himself an unlikely hero. His name spoken with reverence by the Nausicaan people. But the weight of the lives lost, the choices made, hung heavy on his shoulders. But for now he had a new mission, a new purpose. He would fight on, a solitary warrior against the darkness, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us,